You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah Beit Shemesh Israel 5784, 2024. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Korach, and we have the very famous story of the rebellion of Korach against Moshe. And he and 250 members of the tribe of Reuven, as well as Dasan and Aharon, they all fought against Moshe. They all tried to claim that Moshe and Aharon not special, were not chosen, and that all of the entire Jewish people were special and chosen, and therefore they should be the ones to serve in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in place of Aharon. The Torah describes how there was a test, and as the Meforshim explained, even though they knew only one of them would be the winner, and that all the other ones would die, nevertheless, they all entered into this test of bringing the keteris, bringing in the incense offering, and they were all killed. Korach, Dasan, and Aharon, they were all sucked into the ground. Interestingly, Korach's children, they did tshuva at the last moment, they were saved. Many, many years later, we have Lamanetzech, Lamnei Korach. We had singers, Levites, who were from Korach, who did indeed compose beautiful songs for the Mishkan, for the Beis Hamikdash, for the temple. But what I'd like to focus in on is not so much the actual story itself, but the aftermath of the story. Because in the aftermath of the story, there's a very deep idea that Rabbeinu Bachai teaches us. Pasuk says like this: "Vayilonu kol hadas b'nei Yisrael mimacharas." The day after, the entire congregation of the people of Israel complained, Al Moshe ve'al Aharon lemor, atem amisim esam Hashem. They said that, look, you set up this story. You knew that if they would bring this incense offering, they would die. And you called out to Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu, that they should have an unusual death, and that's what happened. The Jewish people witnessed this situation, and instead of taking the lesson of Moshe and Aharon being the chosen ones, they were still upset. They felt that Moshe and Aharon were still grabbing power and were not doing things based, perhaps, heaven forbid, we're not doing things based on the command of Hashem. Now what happens is, as they all come and they gather against Moshe and Aharon, so they see that the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is covered with the cloud, which means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God Himself, is showing that He's present, He's aware of what's going on. And it was a call for Moshe and Aharon. They came in front of the tabernacle, and they had a conversation with Hashem, with God. God speaks to Moshe, and He says, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, separate yourself from this nation, I'm going to destroy them. And I'm not going to read the whole story inside, but basically there's a plague that immediately attaches itself to the Jewish people. 14,700 people die. Huge number, 14,700 people die as a result of this complaint. And Aharon selflessly runs with the incense offering, which has the power to save lives. He runs between the Chaim and the Mesim. He prevents the Magefa from spreading. Psukim say, at the end of the section in chapter 7, verse 15, Vayoshav Aharon el Moshe el Pesach el Moed. Aharon comes back to Moshe, having gone out to bring the incense offering amongst the people. And the plague is stopped. But the story doesn't end there. Moshe and Aharon still need to prove to the Jewish people, and it's truly a wonder. We're going to see together, the Rabbeinu Bachai is going to explain to us what's going on here, but he goes, and obviously he's standing up for the Jewish people, but at the same time they still are questioning whether or not Moshe and Aharon are chosen. Once the poison of Korach went into the Jewish people, it didn't go out so easily. Even with a Magefa of death of 14,700 people. Hashem says like this: "Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor daber al bnei Yisrael v'kach me'itam mateh lebeis av me'ez kol nesiyem lebeis avoisam shneim mates." God instructs Moshe and says, "Take a staff from each of the 12 tribes, and you're going to take the staff of their nasi, of their prince. Shneim mates ish es shmoi tichtav mateo. You're going to write the name of the nasi, it seems, the prince of the tribe, and you'll write the name, the Shem Aharon tichtav al mate Levi, kimate echad l'rish beis avoisam. You write the name of each of the tribes. You also write on the staff of Levi, you're going to take the staff of Aharon, you're going to write his name on it. Here's the test. God says, and this is Hashem speaking, it's not Moshe Rabbeinu asking of God, right? Hashem says, take these 12 staves, place them inside of the Almoid, which it's going to be another test of who's the chosen one, who do I want, who does God want to serve him? Once again, Hashem says, I will prove again to the Jewish people that it's Aharon that I choose, that it's the tribe of Levi that I choose to serve me. Now I'll dispel any questions that the Jewish people have about who is the chosen one. So Moshe sent over this entire instruction from Hashem to the Jewish people, and they indeed brought a staff from each of the leaders of the tribes. Moshe places the staves in the sanctuary. The following day Moshe came in to the sanctuary. There was no mistaking it. The staff that belonged to Aharon, which represented himself and the tribe of the Levites, it had produced, instead of being just the stick, it started to flower. Shkedim. And it had almonds, and it had flowers. The proof, the final convincing proof was there for the Jewish people. He took it out, he brought it and showed it to the entire people. Everyone could see it said Aaron's name on it. Everyone else took back their own staves. And it was proven clearly in front of the Jewish people that Aharon is the chosen one. The tribe of Levi is the chosen one. The final thing here is, God says to Moses, I want you to take that staff of Aharon and I want you to place it with the Aharon inside of the Holy of Holies. And there will be something there to remind these people, the Jewish people who have rebelled against me, so that their complaints should stop and there should be no cause of their death. So Moshe did that, and that's the closing of this story. Now I'd like to read to you from the Rabbeinu Bachai, because the Rabbeinu Bachai addresses an important point as to what exactly were the Jewish people thinking, saying, how can you keep making the same mistake over and over again? How can you keep barking up the wrong tree and saying, oh, Moshe Rabbeinu is unnecessarily taking leadership, and Aharon is taking leadership. I'm saying, let's think about it for a moment. Moshe Rabbeinu had been leading the Jewish people, for a year and a half, 2 years. Aharon HaKohen was there in Egypt with them, leading them, for 80 years. For 80 years. Maybe a little less, because he was 83 at this point, 84 at this point. 70 years. So what's going on here? What is the exact issue? What is the exact issue? So I'd like to read to you what the Rabbeinu Bachai says, because it's very important. It brings the Ramban as well. The congregation, the people of Israel complained. Acher shenasu b'hem shnei dinim blia v'sreifa. Manishalem l'slainen. Shelo yaminu be'inyan amona shlema. The question is, the ground swallowed up Korach. There was a fire that burned up all the 250 people of Reuven who wanted to. And think about it, Reuven is the firstborn, right? That's what we're going to see. It's to do with the firstborn. But what's there to complain about? What is there not to believe? So he brings the Ramban. The Ramban says, "Anachal mefarish ki achar asreifa ha'imamina bekunas Aharon shekvar yotze eishim lefnei Hashem v'teichel karvanosav." The thing was like this. They understood that Aharon was the Kohen Gadol. They understood that he was chosen. The Jewish people didn't come so much out of a place of jealousy. They came out of a place of a desire to be able to serve Hashem in the Mishkan. Think about it, the bechorim, who were originally meant to be the ones to serve Hashem in the Mishkan, the firstborn, they came from each and every tribe. The firstborn of each and every family would be the ones who would serve in the Mishkan. They were swapped out by the Levites, by the Leviim, as a result of what? As a result of the fact that the Jewish people sinned with the golden calf. The Levites were chosen. They were the ones who stood up for the honor of Hashem. The bechorim were the ones who sinned. But still, the Jewish people said, we want our representatives. Why shouldn't there be individual representatives from each tribe? They weren't interested in them being switched out. That's why they complained. They said, look, Moshe Rabbeinu, the test that you gave them was not right, was not appropriate, because the test was with the Ketores, but the Ketores, we understand, the Ketores is brought by the high priest, by Aharon HaKohen. We admit it's Aharon, but it's brought by the high priests. We weren't, the Jewish people were saying, look, you gave them a test that had to do with kahuna, had to do with the priesthood, but that's not what we are interested in. We want them to be like the Levites, serving in the temple, yes, not bringing a higher level of offerings that are not appropriate for them. They should be there to the shkita, perhaps, to the korbanos, to the sacrifices. They should be there to the bechorim, should be the ones to play the music in the Mishkan, should be the singers, etc. They shouldn't be replaced by the Leviim. And this is an explanation of what was necessary in the continuation of the story. It was important that the Jewish people recognized not just the significance and the importance of Aharon himself, but the Levites themselves were chosen in place of the firstborns. I'd like to read to you again from the Rabbeinu Bachai, and this is in the continuation of Psukim, where it says that this very verse, where it says that the one who will be chosen by Hashem, their matzah, their staff would flower and produce fruit, produce almonds, which we'll see what's the significance of the almonds. They were still complaining after the third proof, right? The first two proofs were the fact that Korach and Dasan were swallowed up with their families, and the 250 people were burned alive. They're spiritually burned. The third thing was that there was a magefa. There was a plague, and that killed out 14,700 people. And that was after their complaint. But they still weren't convinced. That's why, after these three signs, these three proofs. So there was another proof, a fourth proof, which had to do with this staff that was going to produce flowers. When they died, so it proved that Hashem was not interested in the bechorim, as we explained above. The second sign was on the fact that God chose Aharon and his sons to be Kohanim. So the only one left is Aharon. And this complaint that they didn't want things to be switched from the bechorim to the Levim, the plague came to respond to that. Hashem says, I have to get rid of these complaints. They're still complaining. So, in the simple understanding of the pasuk, we think of this staff that it's growing flowers. So it's like finally a positive symbol, a positive symbol. Aharon is the chosen one. But the Rabbeinu Bachai says actually in this symbol there was a very strong midas hadin, a judgmental aspect. What is it? He explains. It teaches us that there's going to the growing of the flower, and as we'll see, the growing of the almonds, which are a tough fruit, which are a hard fruit. They're not soft, they're not light. They're something which has a hardness to them. They represent an aspect of din. This shows that whoever argues, whoever comes against the chosen one of Hashem, so negative situations will sprout in their lives, heaven forbid. And this is a sign of a covenant between God and the Levites. Hashem chose the Levites over the firstborn. That's why it's saying Aharon HaKohen was chosen to the house of Levi. All of these signs come to prove that the nevuah, the prophecy of Moses, is true, and it's established, and it's absolutely real. And broken are the claims, finally, that Moshe is making it up on his own. No, it's very clear, it's coming from God. Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to read inside the last point about the shkedim, because I already said the idea to you, which is that the shkedim, the almonds, represent a certain toughness, a certain din. He brings other psukim, other places in Tanakh, where we find that that's the representation of the shkedim. It's something that's constantly, something that you have to be worried about constantly. Shkedim, the root of the word is shakeh, which means a shakdan is someone who's consistently working on things. Someone who's consistently studying, learning, etc. is called a shakdan. It means something that's tough. You got to be tough. You want to succeed in learning, you got to be tough. And what's the bottom line? And why am I sharing with this with you? And what does it teach me? And what can we take out of this? And how can we apply this to ourselves? Because it's a very important idea. And the idea is that sometimes, or many times in life, we want to be greater, and that's really an important idea. It's an important thing to have she'ifas in life, to have desires. I also want to serve in the Mishkan. I hope that when Mashiach comes, they'll identify me. I'm not a Levi, I'm a regular Yisrael, but I hope that maybe they'll identify me as having Levite blood so I can sing in the base of English in the temple. But be that as it may, we all want to serve Hashem to the best of our ability, and to do it in the most, how do I say it? To do it in the most obviously successful way. We want our service of God to be successful. If we speak, if we put out a Parsha Podcast, we want it to be heard by as many people as possible. If we are teachers, we want our students to succeed, as many as possible. We want to be able to serve God. It's a spiritual yearning to want to be able to get in there and be in the Mishkan, to be in the tabernacle, and to be from among those who are called, whose God's name is called upon. And that's a wonderful she'ifa. It's a wonderful aspiration to have. But the mistake of Korach and the mistake of the Jewish people is sometimes God says no. Sometimes we yearn for a relationship with Hashem that we're not zocha to. We don't merit it. We're not there. We have to know who we are. It's like I mentioned in the name of my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Per, that a person needs to have their own way in life. They have to make sure that they're doing what's right. And sometimes they may not agree with those around them. They may choose a path in life that maybe it's the high road. Maybe it's something that's unusual. But, just yesterday I was in Jerusalem with my family for a simcha. We went to the Kotel, my nephew, on tefillin for the first time. And I mentioned to my kids, there were people walking around there with their tefillin on, with tchelis on their tzitzis. And I said, here, they're not afraid to do it. They do what they think is right. And there's a group of them, the Zilberman's Chevra, and they're not afraid to do it. And sometimes trying to do something which is not really what the person is holding, you hit a brick wall. You hit a brick wall, and you see it's not working. And the lesson of our Parsha is that, yes, we need to have she'ifus. Yes, we need to strive. Yes, we need to have aspirations. Yes, we need to rise higher and higher in our service of God. But we also need to know our place. As my Rosh Hashiva would say, do what you think is right, but make sure it really is right. And make sure that the place that you want to be, the place that you choose for yourself, really is who you are and where you belong. And that's not to say that a person should be limited, but we need to hear from our Gedolim, from our Rebbeim, from those outside of us. Korach comes to Moshe and says, hey, I want to be the man. Moshe responds, and Moshe is the voice of Hashem. Moshe has the voice of Hashem speaking through his voice. And we need to know, we need to hear, we need to understand that sometimes we strive higher, and sometimes Kodesh Baruch Hu says, Ad Kan. That's it. And we need to know where those lines are. We need to respect them. That's a very important thing. Klal Yisrael has Kohanim, we have priests. They're on a higher level. They get the first aliyah. They're the ones who go up and they give the blessing to the people. And there are the Levites. They're the singers. They are the ones who pour the water on the hands. They get the second aliyah. Then there's the Yisraelim. And each and every one of us has a place, a role in Klal Yisrael. And we need to understand what our role is. And we need to respect our role. We need to also know that is exactly who we are in Klal Yisrael is exactly who we're meant to be. I'm not meant to look at the Kohen and say, hey, I want to be a priest. I'm not meant to say I want to be a Levite, maybe. Unless I really am. Unless it really is my place. I need to know who I am. I need to understand the Levites were chosen because they stood up by the Maisa Egel, by the golden calf, and they, Mila Hashem Elai, they responded, and the bechorim failed. So they lost a certain level, but it was indicative of the essence of who they were. So we need to search for the essence of who we are. We need to always strive to be greater, but also recognize exactly where we are in the constellation of types of people who serve Hashem and how that manifests in our service of Hashem and the Jewish people. I want to bless you, ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us to indeed find and understand exactly who we are exactly where we belong. Hashem should help us to have the sheifas, to have the aspirations, and to become the best people that we are meant to be. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.